Hey guys! Today I have a multi-part tutorial for you for this week. I'm going to show you how to crochet a face applique. I've been really enjoying making these lately. I love to put them on my clothes, bags, and literally anything that doesn't move. I'm not a pro, but I did figure out a way to make them and I wanted to share it with you guys since I haven't had any luck finding tutorials here on YouTube. This will be a multi-part tutorial with a new section being uploaded daily, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the uploads for parts 2 and 3. And for part 1, we will be working on making the head and body portion of our little crochet person. Materials we'll need for part 1 are 2 yarn colors of your choice, a crochet hook, darning needle, pair of scissors, possibly a stitch marker, and a rocking playlist, and I will leave my playlist for you guys down in the description to check out if you so choose. This tutorial won't have any background music, so you can play your favorite songs as you work on this project. I personally love to crochet with a good song or movie in the background, so don't worry, you will hear my lovely voice, just no background music. And don't forget to like and subscribe and share this with your friends. And now let's get into the tutorial. Alrighty, so for this first part, I'm going to show you how to make 2 different head shapes. One is going to be a perfect circle, and that's the one we're going to do first. And then the second is going to be, or just like going over how you can freeform your head shape and kind of create whatever head shape you want. If you want to go ahead and just skip over to the freeform version, you can just go ahead and skip to the time mark or time stamp, whatever you call it, that is on the screen. But let's go ahead and get into it. I know I probably already mentioned by now the materials that you'll need for this project, but just to reiterate, you're going to want to have some scissors, a darning needle. You may or may not want a stitch marker. You're going to need a crochet hook, and personally, I just think, the smallest crochet hook that you have that's like, reasonable or logical to use for the type of yarn that you're using, just find a smaller hook. And then you're going to want to have 2 colors, one for the skin and then the other to be like the top of your body. So to make our head, first thing you're going to do is you are going to make a magic circle. If you do not know how to make a magic circle, I will put a video in the description to help you guys with getting that done, but you're going to start off with a magic circle. Once your magic circle is done, you're going to go ahead and put a certain number of single crochets in your first initial round. You don't have to do the exact number that I do. You can switch it up a little bit. You just want to make sure that you don't do too many, that when you go to close up your circle, there's like a little hole in the middle because there's too many stitches. Okay? But I'm going to go ahead and start off by putting 7 single crochets into my magic circle. My 7 single crochets are done, so now I'm going to go ahead and take this tail end here and I'm going to pull it to close this circle tight. So now from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip stitch into the top of the very first single crochet from this round. So that is the end of our first round. So what we're going to do is we're going to start following a pattern on how we do our increases to make our circle bigger. So what we're going to do starting off our second round is we're going to chain 1 and then just pull it a little tight. You don't necessarily have to do that, but I don't know. I find for me it helps. But now what we're going to do is we're going to double the amount of stitches we have in our round. So we currently have 7, so we're going to put 2 single crochets into each of our 7 stitches, so we end off with 14. So starting off in the exact stitch that you just slip stitched into, go ahead and put your first 2 single crochets. Ooh, make sure you don't do this too tight. I kind of did mine tight. Okay, but so I have my first 2 done. Now I'm going to move over to the next stitch and put 2 single crochets in there. And then same for all of my remaining stitches. If you need to, you can go ahead and utilize your stitch marker and put it on the very first stitch of your round, so that way it's a little bit easier for you to see where you are starting and ending. But go ahead and put 2 single crochets into every stitch in this round, and I'll meet you guys at the end. Remember, you should have 14 stitches in the round total. All right, so I made it all the way around my circle. I went back and I double checked. I do have 14 stitches. So now I'm going to slip stitch into the top of this very first single crochet of this round, and I'm going to close off to end off round 2. Then I'm going to chain 1 and then set myself up for round 3. So you're going to notice very quickly that there's a pattern in the way you do your rounds. So I'm going to do round 3 and maybe round 4 with you guys, and then I'll let you continue to do however many more rounds you want to do just until you get your head the size you want it to be. But so now what's going to happen is we're going to alternate between doing just one single crochet in a stitch and then an increase. So for this next round, we're going to do 1 single crochet in the first stitch. So your first stitch is the same stitch that you just slip stitched into. Okay. And then in the very next stitch, you're going to do an increase. And an increase is 2 single crochets, if you didn't already know. And then that's going to be the pattern for this round. So next stitch gets 1 single crochet. And then the stitch after that gets an increase. So 2 single crochets. And you're just going to repeat that all the way around. 1 single crochet in the next stitch, then the stitch after that is 2 single crochets. All the way around till you get back to where you started. And to help you keep track, because we started off with 1 single crochet, that means the last stitch should be an increase, so the 2 single crochets. And if you still need some extra help keeping track of things, then just make sure you go back and you count all your little V's in your round to make sure that you're increasing correctly. And always remember, if you need to, go ahead and put a stitch marker on the very first stitch of your round so that way you know where you end off. Okay, so I'm going to keep going and I'll meet you guys at the end of this round. All right, so I just made it to the end of my 3rd round, and to end off this round officially, I'm going to slip stitch into the top of my first single crochet from this round, and then chain 1, and that'll set me up for round 4. Now for round 4, what I'm going to do is this time, instead of doing 1 single crochet and then an increase, I'm going to do 2 single crochets and then an increase. And then if you were to go into the next round, it would be 3 single crochets and then an increase. So I will put up somewhere on the screen like a little chart of how to do your rounds, at least maybe up to like round 10. But you just keep going around and around following this pattern until your head is the size that you want it to be. I'm going to make mine on the smaller side, so I think round 4 will probably be my last round. We'll see what it looks like once it's done, but let's go ahead and do this round together. So in the same stitch that we just slip stitched into, you're going to put 1 single crochet. Then in the next stitch, you're going to do 1 single crochet. And then in the following stitch after that, we do an increase. So once again, the pattern, next stitch, 1 single crochet. Next stitch after that, 1 single crochet. And then 3rd stitch gets an increase. So keep following this pattern all the way around until you get your head to the desired size that you want. You can make your head as big or as small as you want. As I've mentioned, I do like mine to be on the smaller side because of how I go about using mine, but do what you so please. So I'm going to finish this round and then show you guys what comes next. Okay, so I finished my round, and as a matter of fact, I went back in and I did 1 extra round because I did want my head to be just a little bit bigger. And because you can't really tell, just so you have an idea of like to scale how big this is, it's about 2 inches wide, or like 5 centimeters. So it is on the smaller side, but I do like these to be a bit smaller because I like to use them as little patches that go on my clothes. But so once you have your head the size you want it to be, you're going to finish off, make sure you do your slip stitch into the first stitch of your final round. And then you can start to like work down and make your neck. So right from where I left off, let me do my chain one. Now what we're going to do, we're not going to go around, we're just going to go back and forth. So for however wide you want your neck to be, that's how many stitches you're going to single crochet across. So I think I'm just going to do, you can kind of see like, it looks like there are like slight little points on my circle here. And that's just because of the way the increases fall. So I'm going to actually use those as a guide to figure out how wide I want my neck to be. So I'm just going to go from this first stitch here, where I'm currently at, to right about here, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches over. So I'm going to do a single crochet in each of these 5 stitches. Okay, then I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work. Now, however wide or long you want your neck to be, you can still keep going over, further if you want the neck to be wider. I'm just going to stop right here. So I chained 1, turn my work, and now I'm looking at how long I want my neck to be, which I don't want it to be super long. So I might only do like 1 or 2 more, rows back and forth. We'll see. You just got to feel everything out. So once again, let me put 1 single crochet in each of my 5 stitches here. Okay, then chain 1 and turn my work. And looking at it, I think, yeah, I think I want to make my neck just 1 more row longer. And then let me take a look at them, right side up. That looks good to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 1 from here, and then I'm going to just cut my yarn. Pull that tail through. And then to make your life a little bit easier, for whichever side you know you want to be the front side of your face, make sure that you just, as you go along, take your tail ends and like weave them in so that way they fall on the back side. So while I have this here, I'm going to grab my darning needle and I'm going to weave it in through this end that we just cut off, and then flip it to the back side, and then in no special way or anything like that, just go ahead and weave in that tail end so that way it's on the back side of your project and not in the front getting in the way. And if you wanted to, you can cut them. I'm just not going to worry about that just yet, but this is what your head should look like. So you got your head and your neck. And now what we're going to do is the little bit that's going to be like the body. It's not going to be a full body. We're not making a whole person, but just like the top half. So, our little head doesn't look like, like a little naked person. We want to give them some clothes. So once that's done, you're going to go ahead and grab your color that you want to use as the top of your shirt. And you're going to make a slip knot. And you're going to attach this down at the base. It doesn't matter which end you start at, but you're going to attach it at the base of your neck. So I'm going to start in this corner here. And now what I'm going to do, because I want my shirt to fan out a little bit and not be perfectly straight in alignment with the neck, I'm going to increase at my 2 ends just to make it kind of go out a little bit. So it almost gives like the appearance of what what are they called? It almost gives the appearance of like what shoulders would do. So in the same stitch that I just attached my yarn into in this corner, I'm going to do 2 single crochets. And then in these middle 3 stitches here, I'm going to just put 1 single crochet. And then in my last stitch, I'm going to do 2 single crochets. So that's the end of this row. Now going into the next one, I want my shirt to just be a little bit longer. So I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work and do the same thing that I did for the previous row. So in my first stitch, I'm going to do 2 single crochets into that first one, and then do a single crochet into every stitch after that up until I get to the last stitch. Then I'm going to do another 2 single crochets into that last one. Okay, I'm gonna flip this over so we can look at it right side up. So this is what my head looks like now. So if you wanted to keep going and make yours even longer and wider, you can. Now that I'm looking at it, my neck does look a little bit long, so I probably could have not done that third row, but take some time to practice. You figure out what you like as you go. But I think this is as wide as I want my shirt to be and as long as I think I want it to be. Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to make my shirt one more row longer, but I'm not going to make it any wider. So instead of doing 2 single crochets on my ends, I'm just going to do 1 single crochet in each stitch across. Okay, now I think I'm done. So once you're done with that, you can chain 1 and then cut your yarn. Pull that tail through, and then go ahead and grab your darning needle and then weave in those tail ends so that way they fall on the back side of your project. And this is what this first head looks like. So I have my actual head, there's a bit of a neck, and then a body. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and make a freeform head shape. So here's our little guy from the first half of this video where we were making like the perfectly circular head. But, everyone's head isn't perfectly circular. Sometimes we want them to have, some interesting, cool little shapes to them. So now I'm going to show you how I would go about doing that. So this time you do not need to start off with a magic circle. We're actually going to make a slip knot and then do a chain of 4. So once you have your chain of 4, you're going to go ahead and chain 1 additional chain, and that is going to be our turning chain. So now in our initial 4 stitches or 4 chains, you're going to put 1 single crochet into each of these stitches here. Make sure you don't do this super loose, this very first row or first little chain, because you don't want to create any gaps in your head. So this is what it looks like so far. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to chain 1, turn my work, and again I'm going to put 1 single crochet into each of my 4 stitches. Okay, and then this next part might not be the easiest to see, so I'm going to try and explain it the best way I can. Is what's going to happen is instead of just working our rows back and forth and just having this turn into like a long strip, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to work my way around into the sides of, this, row of 4 that I have, as well as also going into the other side of this initial chain 4 that we had. So it's going to end up like turning into a circle, or we'll be working in the round. So instead of chaining 1 and turning my work, since I'm at a corner here, I do want to soften these like 4 little edges here and make sure they're a little bit more rounded. I don't want a square head. So I'm going to put another single crochet in this last stitch that we just did. And then working my way down the side, I'm just going to do 1 single crochet into whatever little space I can find. So it looks like I have a space right here I can put a single crochet in, and then the one right next to it. I'm sorry if you guys can't see this too well, but just go ahead and wherever you can put a single crochet into the stitches down along that side. And because this is another one of my like 4 little points here, or corners, maybe that's a better way of wording it, I'm going to go ahead and stick another single crochet into this same spot. Okay. And then that brings me, as I'm turning my work, it brings me to the other end of my initial chain 4. So it might be kind of hard to see these, but you'll see these weird little like loop things, or like half of a loop. It's the other half of that V, and I'm just going to go ahead and stick 1 single crochet into each of those 4 ends of my stitch. Okay, and then once again I'm at another corner, so I'm going to stick a single crochet into that space because in a second it's going to help soften these curves a little bit. And then I'm just going to do maybe 1 or 2
single crochets along this side to bring me back to where I started in this round. Okay, and now I'm back where I started. So here is where the freeform concept really comes into play. So now I'm just going to keep building up, going around, oops, dropped my work. I'm just going to keep building up my project, going around and around into these stitches, however many times I need to until my head is as big as I want. And the way that you're going to help create, the shape and build out certain places higher than others is by doing half double crochets, single crochets, and slip stitches. So I'll give you guys a little example of how that goes. So into this very next stitch, no need to like chain one or anything, I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to put 2 half double crochets into this stitch. You don't have to do it this way. This is just to show you an example so you'll see how, the shape kind of builds up. And now what I'm going to do is in the next 2 stitches, I'm just going to put 1 half double crochet. And now say I didn't want to continue building up this extra height. So in the next stitch, what I could do to lower it a little bit, which will, make this kind of go down, which will change the shape a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a single crochet into this next stitch. Okay. Now you might have to work this up a little bit for you to fully see how it affects the shape, but that is basically the concept. So in the next stitch as well, I'm going to go ahead and put, oops, I'm going to put 1 single crochet. And then in the stitch after that, let's play around and put 2 single crochets in here, just because I am going to have to do increases as I go around, so that way my work doesn't start to fold over because there's just not enough stitches that I'm building up to accommodate, it getting bigger as I go around. So, okay, you can kind of see it a little bit here. So this is where we started off doing the half double crochets, and then these few right here are the few single crochets that we've done. And in comparison, maybe I need to sit it down. But in comparison to the other side that we have yet to touch, this side is kind of square, whereas this side it's like bigger here and then it narrows or like tapers in down here. So using this concept, you can continue to make this bigger, and then in the areas where you want it to, go out a bit wider, use the half double crochets. When you're ready for it to get a bit more narrow, do your single crochets, and then in places where you really don't want there to be any, increasing in size, you can just do a slip stitch. So let me continue on with doing half double crochets and single crochets for this round, and then maybe in the next round I'll show you an example of adding in slip stitches. So I just ended off with that single crochet, so let's do 2 single crochets into this next stitch. And maybe I'll do a single crochet into the next 3 stitches. And now in in these next 3 stitches, I'm going to do some half double crochets. So next stitch, I'll do 1 half double crochet. Stitch after that, I'll do 2 half double crochets to help me make sure that I am increasing a little bit. And then next stitch, we'll do just 1 half double crochet. Okay. So I can kind of start to see how my shape is building up, which because you have to play around with it a little bit, but just because of the way that I'm doing it, it looks like I'm going to want this part to be like the top of the head, and then this part down here will start to be like the chin area. So I can be mindful of that as I'm like building up my shape. I'll know which sides of my circle here I now want to add the half double crochets as opposed to the single crochets, which will probably be more so on the sides, and then maybe I'll do some slip stitches along the bottom. So that's just what I'm going to do. I'm just going to keep working my way around and around and around, playing around with it until I end up getting a shape that I'm happy with. So I'll play around with this a little bit, and then I'll show you guys what it ends up looking like after I've done a couple more rounds of this. Okay, so I just kept going around and around, alternating between doing single crochets and half double crochets, and then also adding in some increases along the way so that way my work didn't fold up too much. It stayed pretty nice and flat for the most part. And as you can see, this is the shape that I currently have. It's slightly oval, it's still kind of circular. So I could like add in some more half double crochets along this side and then do some single crochets or just slip stitches along these sides to help keep them from growing out so much. But once you are satisfied with the shape, what you're going to do is you can slip stitch into the next stitch, chain one, and then we're actually going to cut our work here. So cut off that, pull that tail end through. And what we're going to do is we're going to reconnect our yarn in position of where we want to build up our neck area, which might not be where you left off at, since we're not working in a perfect circle this time. I think the chances of you wanting to build your neck up from where you happen to end off is probably a little unlikely considering that this is freeform, but that's okay because it's really not that big of a deal to reconnect it. So once you have finished off that end, you're going to go ahead and you can turn your little shape around in whichever different ways you want until you have found where you want to be the top of the head and the bottom. So this part down here is more narrow than what I have going on up here. So this is where I want my neck to be in order to keep this semi-realistic. So I'm just gonna eyeball it down here and see how many of these stitches I want to have like my neck build off of. So I think we're gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 to 5. We'll see what happens. So in this stitch here where I think I want to start off, I'm going to go ahead and grab my yarn and reattach it into this stitch. Okay. And now I'm going to do a row of single crochets across however many stitches I want my neck to end up being widthwise. So starting off in the same stitch that I just attached my yarn into, I'll do my first single crochet. And then I'll do a single crochet in the next 3 stitches and figure out if that's the right width that I think I want to have my neck be. Yeah, I actually think that's pretty good. I could go over one more, but I think I'll end it right there. So I'm going to chain one and turn my work once I'm happy with the width. And now we're going to start to build down the length of our neck a little bit. Now, because of how I'm going to have everything sizing wise, I think I'm actually only going to do one more row of this, but you can make your neck as wide and as long as you want. So you can play around with it. It's also not, too big of a headache to just undo the neck part and just redo it. So there's not like a whole bunch of crazy commitment that's going on here. So you really do have some time and space to play around with this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 single crochets into the first stitch, and then because I have 4 stitches here, I'll put 1 single crochet in the next 2 stitches, and then I will put 2 single crochets into this last 4th stitch here. At least I think that's what I want to do. Take a look at it. Yep, I'm liking how it's looking. So then from there, I'm going to chain 1 and cut my work. Okay. So this is what my work is looking like so far. I have a head and I have a neck, and I am actually going to, you're going to notice the head shape is going to change a little bit just because I had to refilm this portion because my audio just decided that it wanted to go out on me. So next up, I'm going to show you how I did this part down here, which is just adding on like the shoulders or a little bit of clothing that we're going to have on our head here. I'm going to use a different color yarn, so instead of using pink, I'm going to use blue. So I'm going to make a slip knot, grab my hook and my project,
and starting in the corner, but this time just to show you a different way of going about, creating a type of shape for the body. Instead of just connecting at the base of where the neck begins, I'm actually going to go up to the first row of where my neck starts, and I'm going to attach my yarn there. So as you can see, it's like on the side, not at the very end. So attach my yarn there, and then I'm going to single crochet into that same place where I just attached my yarn. And then I'm going to work my way around and put one single crochet into each of these stitches here. Okay, so I got one. Let me take this out and make it a little bit easier to see. So I have one single crochet here on, which was essentially the side of my neck, and then one single crochet into each of the 4 stitches that was at the base of my neck. And now I'm going to do one more on the other side portion of my neck, which essentially creates a like curved little neckline. It's not perfectly straight. And you don't have to do it this way. This is just showing you a different option to do your neckline. So from there, I chained one, I'm turning my work, and then similarly to how I did this side, this person, I do want the neck or shoulder portion to like go out a little bit. So on my 2 ends, I am going to do 2 single crochets instead of just 1 single crochet. So I chained one, turned my work. In this first stitch, we'll do 2 single crochets into there, and then 1 single crochet I'll put in each of these stitches across up until the last one. In this last one, I'll do another 2 single crochets into that last stitch. Okay, and as you can see, this is the type of neckline or shape that it creates when you go about doing your little neck portion like this. So little compare and contrast, you can see the difference. It's very subtle but nuanced difference. So if you want to make your neckline bigger, you can keep going down and down and down until you have the amount of rows that you so desire. But for me, I'm going to stop right here. So I'm just chaining one, cutting my yarn, pulling that tail through, and then once again, I'm going to weave in these 2 tail ends that I have from my new color, and I'm just going to make sure that they fall on the back side of my project. Now, if you want, after you do that, you can cut down all of these little tail ends so they're not, just hanging out free to be you and me, like all over the place, or you can just leave them alone if they don't really bother you at this stage. But I do think it is really important to make sure that they do fall on the back side of your project. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then we'll finish up part 1 of this video. Okay, so here are what your 2 final little head shapes should be looking somewhat like. I do, like I mentioned earlier, I do recommend that you play around with doing this a few times. Don't expect it to come out looking perfect the first time. There is a little bit of a learning curve to this. I know when I was doing it for the first time, like it does take a second for you to just figure out what it is that you like. You might like the perfectly circular head shape. You might want to try and freehand it, but whatever it is that you decide to do, give yourself a chance, have the patience to just figure it out, play around, have some fun with it until you find something that works for you. Make sure you have your notifications turned on and that you're subscribed so you will know when part 2 gets uploaded. It is going to be uploaded tomorrow, and we will be working on making facial features and ears. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you guys tomorrow with part 2. Bye guys.